Hello, good evening, afternoon, good evening. It's a long day already. Are we ready to go? Mr. Harvey? Also. Councillor Harvey. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of Perth and Kinross Licensing Committee. I'm Bailey Mike Williamson, convener of the committee, and I'm joined by my vice convener, Councillor Ian McPherson. I'm also joined by other members of the committee. On my left is Moina McLaren, Deputy Clerk and Solicitor to the committee, and on my right is Magda Pasternak, Clerk to the committee. Also joining us are Sean Omiki and Scott Gibson from the licensing team. Can I ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received for today's meeting and confirm the attendance of those in the chamber and online?
Thank you, convener. We have an apology from Councillor Chan, and I believe we are still waiting for Councillor Robertson to join, so he might do that in a second. All other members are present in the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect to the business on the agenda today? There are no declarations of interest. Could I therefore move on to the minutes of the previous meeting? Thanks. Could I ask if the meeting of the minute of the meeting of the licensing committee held on the 30th of June 2025 can be. Thank you. Members, we are now moving on to paper 4, which is the grant of short-term licence, Greystones, Low Gilpin, Perth. Just wait a few seconds. Thank you. Could I just go back, Councillor Carr, you don't have any declarations of interest for the meeting today. Thank you. Okay, members, this report is page 9 onwards of your documentation pack. For this item of business, we are joined by the applicant, no, we're not joined by Mrs. Sheila Flavel. Alan Farrington.
Right, it's gone green now. Right, okay, thank you. Apologies for that. I'm the professional advisor to Logie Estate, so I will be speaking to the objection made by Mr. John McCrone, and I'm accompanied by Philip Blount, who's the estate manager and is here acting on behalf of Mrs. Flavel. And with your indulgence, there may be certain questions, I'd like to think not, but there may be certain questions specific to the properties in the estate that I'm not able to answer. And if Mr. Blunt's probably in a much better place than I am, working on the estate on a day-to-day basis to answer those questions. So if that's acceptable. Okay.
I'm sorry, we didn't catch your name.
My name's Alan Farningham. Pardon? Well, I'm a professional advisor to the estate and Mrs. Flavel, and I'm a practicing town planning consultant and have been for a good number of years. And I've worked with Mrs. Flavel and her husband at the Logie estate for the last 5 years since the estate was bought.
All right, that's it. Sean, did you have something to say?
Convener, was just to explain that Mrs. Flavel was being represented by the two gentlemen in council.
Moina McLaren, who will introduce the report and advise on the procedures for the hearing.
Yeah, as the objector is not going to be here today, what we would do is you would just speak, respond to the objections. The committee have had an opportunity, the committee have sight of the written objection, and I'm sure I have to ask everybody's read the written objection. So what would happen is you just, just respond to the objection that has been presented, and the committee may ask questions, and then you get an opportunity if you wish to sum up at the end, and give you a reason as to why you think that the application should be granted.
Okay, could I now please invite Mr. Fannington to provide details of the application and respond to the written objection?
Thank you. The property known as Greystones, located in the small settlement of Harrietfield in Logie can accommodate up to 9 persons by way of 4 double bedrooms and a single bedroom. It was originally anticipated that 10 persons could be accommodated. However, following further detailed assessment, it was considered by the applicant that the dimensions of one of the double bedrooms rendered it only capable of comfortably accommodating a single bed, hence the reduction from the original occupancy capacity of 10 to 9. Mr. McCrone has made several claims and inferences in his objection. In this regard, it's worth clarifying the following. Greystones is a large established residential property used as a holiday home by the previous owners, which has been recently renovated. The applicant, among several other managed short-term lets in the area, operates a short-term let at a property called Stormont House in Harrietfield, which adjoins other residential property, all without complaint or any adverse impact on residential amenity. The applicant is unaware of any attempt by the objector to communicate and discuss the proposal. Such communication would have been embraced and indeed addressed positively. The applicant has no plans for the existing church and outbuildings other than for current storage purposes. And vehicular and pedestrian access to Greystones is legally shared with the Old Village Hall. The septic tank for the Old Village Hall is located within the grounds of Greystones, over which the owner has a legal right of access, which he regularly exercises. Greystones is served by a separate septic tank facility within its own grounds. The private water supply, which serves the Old Village Hall, comes through the grounds of Greystones. It is owned by the applicant through a company called Logie Water Limited, to which everyone in Harrietfield pays rates, including Mr. McCrone. Works carried out on the adjoining watercourse on land owned by Greystones and the private water supply was for maintenance purposes only. The latter involved the removal of asbestos and lead piping being replaced with plastic piping. Mr. McCrone benefited from these improvements. Harrietfield Logie Parish Church, located immediately to the north of Greystones, which the applicant owns, is a Grade C listed building, currently used for storage purposes by the applicant. Neither Greystones nor the Old Village Hall are listed. 3 mature trees outwith the immediate garden ground of Greystones, but located on adjoining land owned by the applicant, were removed by the applicant for safety reasons due to their very poor and dangerous condition caused by groundwater erosion. The 3 trees are not the subject of a tree preservation order and do not fall within a conservation area. All works carried out on Greystones and associated land have been legitimately implemented without compromising or prejudice to any aspect of the legislative framework governing such matters. In particular, the renovation works carried out by the applicant to Greystones do not require formal planning permission, given their predominantly internal nature. The replacement of a window with an external door on its front elevation also does not require planning permission and falls under permitted development rights for householders. A building warrant is not required, given that the renovations are wholly non-structural. The maintenance works carried out on the adjoining watercourse and the private water supply do not need the express consent of either SEPA or indeed Scottish Water. Listed building consent is not required for the renovation works on account of Greystone's non-listed building status. Given the primarily internal nature of the works and that no external alterations have been made to the rear elevation of Greystones immediately opposite the C-listed church building, there is no impact on the setting of the listed building that would warrant a requirement for listed building consent. And then lastly, the removal of the 3 mature trees on safety grounds due to groundwater erosion negates the need to apply for a felling licence. As the sites are not the subject of a tree preservation order or located within a conservation area, planning permission and/or conservation area consent were also not required. Just turning to loss of residential amenity, as evidenced by a site visit, neither the front nor rear private garden areas of the Old Village Hall are overlooked by Greystones. Indeed, the property boundaries between the Old Village Hall and Greystones are not only physically separated by the shared access road, but also by a substantially tall mixture of mature hedging and trees along the southwestern boundary of Greystones, which includes a solid wooden vehicular access gate, which is generally closed when not in use. There will therefore be no loss of residential amenity to the Old Village Hall if Greystones secures a short-term let licence as proposed. Such a use will be no different to that of a large family home, which Greystones essentially is. Indeed, it is possible that the Old Village Hall could experience an uplift in amenity terms, given that such holiday destination lets generally result in much less traffic movements than that associated with a large family residing at a property with several members' cars accessing and egressing the property on a regular basis. It is further worth noting that the property to the immediate east of Greystones, known as Kirkside Cottage, owned by Mr. Brian and Mrs. Alex Strathy, which shares a mutual physical boundary and therefore is arguably more likely to experience any potential loss of amenity, have no objections to the proposed short-term let and indeed have forwarded a letter of support to the applicant. The mixture of a high wall and mature vegetation ensures this property will also not suffer a loss of amenity on account of a short-term let being granted for Greystones. And finally, just to conclude, Greystones is a large established residential property which has been recently renovated to an exceptionally high standard. With a large garden and ample on-site parking, it is well suited to use as a short-term let. If granted a licence, such a use will have no adverse impact on the legal rights or the level of residential amenity currently experienced, nor the level of amenity to be expected by any future owners of the Old Village Hall property. I would respectfully request that, having carefully considered the facts before you, there being no detriment to the interests of either the objector or others, that a licence be granted to Mrs. Flavel, the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions for Mr. Farnington? Sorry, Councillor Harvey.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. Just a quick question. You said that you'd been trying to engage with the objector to see if you could discuss some of the issues. You didn't have any success in that, no?
Sorry, what I actually said, and perhaps it didn't come over as well as I wanted it to, was that in his objection, the objector claims that he had tried to make contact with the applicant and that that had been basically blocked. The fact is that my understanding is that no attempt was made by the objector to speak to Mrs. Flavel or her representatives, including Philip, and that if they had done, or if he had done, there would have been no issue with sitting down and discussing the issues that he had, and hopefully avoiding, a presentation like today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You've interpreted my question because I noticed from his comments that he said he's tried to contact, but that hasn't been your experience there. Thanks.
Councillor Bear.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Mr Fanningham, for that very wide-ranging and detailed report there. I would just like to ask, does Mrs Flaville have any kind of a specific marketing strategy or a target audience to whom she hopes to let this property Greystones out? Thank you.
If I may, could I pass that question over to Philip, because he's in a much better position than me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Mrs Flaville owns the Logie Armand estate, which is about 5,500 acres. And within that 5,500 acres, we have 18 current holiday homes that we let. We don't have a marketing strategy. We put the properties on Airbnb, Booking.com and other organisations like that to bring guests to us. Plus we have our own website that details all the properties that we let out for holiday purposes in the area.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. Thank you for your presentation, fully covered. One thing you did mention was parking spaces. You've got 9 people, you could have up to 4 cars particularly. Do you have ample spacing for that? Because I get the impression when looking through what's been written, there's a narrow track getting in, that track could get blocked easily. I may be wrong, but are there ample spaces within the grounds of the house to park?
Yes, so currently at Greystones, there's parking for about 8 or 9 cars on both sides of the house. Yes.
Are there any further questions? Okay, thank you. Could I please invite Mr Farnington to sum up, please?
Yes, I think, as I said at the end of my presentation, that this is a property that's well suited to short-term let. It's being managed by a lady and company that have a very, very successful and unblemished record in managing short-term lets within this area. And that in terms of loss of residential amenity, if you're on site, it's impossible within the garden ground of Greystones to overlook in any shape or form the private garden areas of the old village hall, given that the significant vegetation that prevails along the boundary means that it's impossible to overlook in any shape or form. And it's similarly with the adjoining property, the Kirkside Cottage to the east, very, very similar circumstances. And as I said, Mrs Flaville has had a letter of support from that adjoining neighbour saying that they've no issues at all. And in fact, they're keen to see the property used for short term because it's been vacant for quite a while now. So all things considered, given the suitability of the property, given the success of the management of Mrs Flaville in terms of similar type holiday lets, and Philip will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that she operates 19 holiday lets in the immediate area of Harrietfield just now, all very, very successfully and all without complaint. And on that basis, on balance, I would have thought that granting a licence would be appropriate.
Thank you. Do members wish to adjourn for further discussion? Okay, therefore my motion is to grant the application. Do I have a seconder? Are there any amendments to the motion? So therefore your licence has been granted.
Thank you very much.
Press turn red, green, then as soon as you finish speaking.
Hello? Hello? David Gifford speaking here.
Hello, we can hear you.
Hello?
Hello?
Okay.
Okay, so members, we're now moving on to paper 5, which is the grant of a short-term license application for Mr. Peter Browner MacDonald. Do I need to introduce everybody across the top table here first for you? Nope, you're okay with that. Thank you. Makes my job a little bit easier. Thank you. For this item of business, we're joined by the applicant, Mr. Peter MacDonald. We're also joined by the objectors to the application, Ali Elgore, who is representing his wife, Linda Elgore, Colleen Stanfield, who is present in the chamber. Also, David Gifford via telephone. David, can you hear us? I think we could hear him for a second to 5. Further written objections were also received from Alison MacLeod, Nicholas and Diana Caldwell Horsfall, Ian McIntyre from the Loch Towel Sailing Club, Dr. Namda Moshep and Ishbel McLaren and Andrew McIntyre, who are not present today. We're also joined by your Ishbel. I do apologise, Ishbel. We're also joined by Mr. David Taylor, who will be speaking on his submitted letter of representation. I will now hand over to Moyna McLaren, who will introduce the report and advise on the procedures for the hearing.
In this case, what will happen is the usual procedure is that as objectors, you would speak to your objections and questions would be asked of you, and then Mr. MacDonald, you get a chance to respond to what's been said, and in your response as to why you think a short-term let should be granted, and then you go back and you could have a chance to summarise your position. Then you have a chance to summarise position. But as a preliminary matter, I'd like to say is, are there any other documents required to be submitted at this stage? Or? No. Okay. And thank you. Let's proceed.
Thank you very much. Could I please invite Mr. Elgore to provide details of his objection?
Thank you very much. My name is Ali. My wife and I sent in the objections. They're all fairly clear on the document. I won't go through them to cut down time. I'll just say that we met with Mr. MacDonald, and it was very kind of him to meet us and try to alleviate our concerns and explain some of the things he would try to do to mitigate things. His proposals didn't really convince us because there was a number of issues that were outside his control, and we felt that all the points that we made about the noise, the light, the impact on the environment, and the fact that it's such a large property, that it would really have quite a big impact. So I would like you to still consider all the points that are in the letter, and I'm happy to answer any questions on them if you want me to. Thank you.
Okay, do members have any questions for Mr. Elgore? Mr. Elgore, could I therefore invite Mr. Gifford to provide details of his objection? Mr. Gifford, could you
Me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. I'll start again. Like Mr. Elgore, I put my objections in writing, but I'll keep short and to the point. They effectively centre on the issue of the size of the property and the impact that the number of guests and the sound and the light that they produced as a result of being in residence would be easily transmitted across the loch. And I know that has been a meeting which I wasn't able to attend, at which Mr. MacDonald tried to put people's minds at ease. But I don't believe you can't completely control situations like that. It's a little bit like herding squirrels when people are out to enjoy themselves and have fun and make use of the environment. It's not something that you can wholeheartedly police without spoiling their experience. And I know for a fact, living directly opposite the loch, what impact that will have on the humans. It's also the impact on the nature within the environment. And there's both on Mr. MacDonald's side of the loch and our side of the loch, there are very good populations of daytime wildfowl and nighttime owls and other animals, pine martens, red squirrels, all of which are going to be somewhat alarmed by excess noise, which I hope wouldn't include fireworks. But no mention has been made of fireworks being let off at any point. But I know from experience that that is something that other properties on the loch have taken part in, having fireworks, letting them off at all times of night. Highly disruptive. The use of watercraft, moving on to my other point, using watercraft and possibly at speed. I don't have any problems with watercraft going up and down the loch motorized at sensible speeds doing trawling type fishing. But there have been examples where jet skis, jet boats, speed boats have been used by other residents of the loch. And all it does is impact seriously on the other neighbours on the loch and the other users of the loch. So I'm strongly against any launching of watercraft that may be used at high speed. I know he's tried to put our minds at rest on that matter, but he also says that it will be up to them to bring their motorcraft if they wish to. He certainly won't be providing them, but he can't stand on the side of the loch or anyone else telling them from the side what speed they can go at. It's only advisory, and an advisory guideline can easily be broken. So that's where I stand on that one. I think those are my main points. I'd like to just probably stop at that really, otherwise I'll be repetitive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. Do members have any questions for Mr. Gifford? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you. Can I ask, what time of the day are the jet skis and watercraft present on the loch? Is it during the day or is it during antisocial hours?
No, it's not at night. I've never seen a jet ski or a jet boat or a high-speed boat going up and down at night, but it would be during the daylight hours. Yeah, but it's something which is very much it goes against what the agreement of the riparian owners has been up until this point around the loch, in that boats with motorized boats accessing the loch have done so at very reduced speeds. I mean, we're talking about the speed that you would troll a fishing line behind the boat, because that is predominantly what they're used for. And it's been a happy agreement up until now, and it's very rarely been abused. However, on the occasions when it is abused, there has been some retort from the people who've done the abusing to say, well, that's a riparian owners agreement. It's only an agreement. It's not a law. And they've carried on regardless, disagreeing, just doing what they like. That has been the position of some anxiety in the past during daylight hours. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford. My question is some of the issues, the potential issues that you've identified with the property as it being used for a short-term let. Aren't those also issues that could be a reality if the property were used as a family home? Thank you.
Yes, indeed it could. But the owner, and I don't disagree with that statement, but the owner knows where we stand on it. And he's made a verbal and a written agreement to comply with the feelings and the behaviour of agreed by the other riparian owners. My point is that any short-term let clients coming into the house are not. They may be asked not to behave in an irrational manner on the loch, but if no one is there to control them, there's no way that you can actually enforce it.
Thank you, but isn't that true for anybody that say, for example, just turns up, just for one day with a jet ski on a trailer or a powerboat on a trailer, and then just engages in activities on the loch?
But yes, it would if the situation arose where people can launch boats of that nature. But it is not permitted to freely launch boats at any point along the loch, either from the roadside or from there is no access for boat launching, and it's not a permitted. The only boat launched that I have witnessed by somebody just turning up as a camper. They're not supposed to do this. They brought their own inflatable boat with a 5 horsepower or thereabouts outboard on the back, and they went flying up. This was during the daytime. They went flying up and down the loch, and actually aimed it at swans, trying to get swans to take off on the water, because they thought it was amusing to do that. That is, I've only ever seen that happen once, but it's representative of the sort of thing that people who launch or who may launch boats and aren't aware of, the care that needs to be taken of the environment and of nature, might abuse it. It's one of the sad side effects of allowing free and open access to the countryside. I'm not against people having free and open access to the countryside, but I am very clear that people actually have a responsibility to that countryside, and it can be a loch just as much as it's a loch side or a hillside or a lovely walk in the woods. The loch is just as important. In fact, it's such a large and open space. Any antisocial behaviour on it, or behaviour which impacts on other people's enjoyment, like noise and boats going up and down at high speed, has a much greater impact, I would say. So yes, it can happen. Other people can abuse it. My hope is that people who actually own properties alongside the loch and have therefore got the right to launch boats onto it do so and allow it to happen in a way which can be controlled and which is tolerable and to the agreement of everyone else who uses it and lives on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. My mic's not working. I'll bring in Councillor Brown, then followed by Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, convener, and thank you for your deputation. I hope you can hear me. I want to come back to this question about the use of the loch. It's a point that was raised by, I think, all the objections in writing. Just to clarify, for own peace of mind, there are no bylaws, as far as you know, restricting use of the loch. And for what you're saying, it's like effectively a voluntary code. It's just that when we were talking just in the last answer, you mentioned people aren't permitted to launch a boat from the side of the loch. And I'm just wondering, when you say not permitted, is there some sort of bylaw to stop that?
No, there isn't a bylaw. It's a good point. I've never actually seen it in writing, but if you ask if you ask the rangers that patrol the area, I believe that they are of the understanding that boats cannot be freely launched from the side of the loch. The Forestry Commission, who own a significant amount of the land down there, would probably come up with an answer similar. But I mean, we get people launching fishing, canoes, lightweight craft like inflatables, and accessing the water in that manner because they don't need to launch them from a trolley. They can be lifted and put straight into the water. It's where boats like jet boats, jet skis need to be rolled into the water to launch them. The actual number of launching sites where that can be carried out are few and far between. And one is the Sailing Club, which is highly controlled, and only club members can do that. And the only motorized craft operating from there are official rescue craft, only used during times when events require safety boat cover. And then there is the campsite down the very far end, which is where the majority of the cruisers are berthed, either on moorings or on land and then launched. And they come up and down, go up and down the loch quite happily, not disturbing anybody, enjoying a day on the water. And that's really as extensive as it gets. There have been boats launched up at the far end, up by the Tummel Hotel, up towards Tummel Bridge. I've witnessed a motorboat being launched and driven down the loch at some speed, faster than boats normally use the water at. So I'm not saying that there are no other possibilities, but they're very restricted. And in answer to your question, just to reiterate, I believe that there is, that is frowned upon by, but it's not actually a written bylaw that I've actually seen.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, thanks for your answer. Just a quick follow-up. As far as you know, there's no speed limit on the water. No speed limit displayed.
Oh, certainly there aren't. No, not to the way that they are in other parts of the country, as I've seen, and have personal experience of. But again, what it comes down to is, the long term. Anyone who's lived along the loch for a long period of time, or any period of time, has been encouraged not to use boats at high speed, being a word of mouth thing rather than signage.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Could I ask a question for bringing Councillor Harvey? Just to give us some idea, how wide is the loch? Could you give us an idea how wide the loch is between the applicant's house and Foss, maybe?
And Foss, it's probably about half a mile, something like that.
Okay, thank you.
And it's also it's the widest part of the loch. It tapers off going west and it tapers off going east.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, I can answer your question, Convener. It's between Loch Tummel Sailing Club and the applicant's house is 902 metres, so about half a mile.
Right.
Thanks. Is that right? Yeah. Thanks very much for your presentation. I've got related questions to the ones before. If you were able to control the amount, the launching of boats and fireworks and any noise from that place after a certain time, would you still feel you would be objecting to this development?
If it was, if there was complete control, i.e., the disturbance is kept to a complete minimum and consideration given to wildlife and residents of the loch, and as much as done was possible to screen the house from light and sound, as you say. I can't see how it could have a reasonable objection. It's just that I want to stress that unless it's actually policed and controlled consistently and well, then it all sort of kind of comes tumbling down, really. But in answer to your question, if it all, in a perfect world, if it was all mitigated and taken care of, and issues, as Mr. McDonald says, he wants to minimise or reduce the visual impact of the property to anybody, not just us directly opposite, but anyone looking at the property, to make it less impactful on the environment, then I should be very happy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Gifford? Okay, Billy Brock.
Hello, Mr. Gifford. I just wondered if you could confirm how many properties there is on the other side of the loch to where the proposed one is at the moment.
Directly opposite, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6, maybe 7 that have direct visual line of sight to the property.
Okay, and what would happen if any of them were to use the loch at any time, which they would probably be free to do? How would that work out?
Well, they would have an agreement. You mean how would they launch? Do you mean?
Yes, how would they launch, and if they maybe use jet skis or anything like that, how would that come? How would that be felt?
Well, it would be felt in the same way, but at the moment and up until now, it's not arisen as the use of motorcraft from there has been only to launch a boat for fishing purposes with an outboard motor. There has never been an attempt to launch a motorboat or a jet ski from any of the properties that are directly on the opposite side of the loch from Schiehallion House. And if it did happen, I should think it would spark a significant reaction. But since we're talking about a small number of houses, all of whom know all of the owners know each other, and since they have jointly objected to the use of watercraft at speed on the other side of the loch or anywhere, they just have, as I was saying earlier, when it's a question of word of mouth, an agreement to try and maintain as much peace as possible, they would be equally as against it as I am.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Gifford? Mr. Gifford, my understanding is the loch is actually quite shallow at that end of the loch. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. All of that part of the loch was subject to being flooded when the loch was raised back in at the beginning. I think it was in the 30s. It's probably depending. It goes up and down, but it's probably about 25 feet maximum, something like that.
Okay, thank you. Could I now invite Mr. Stanfield to provide details of his objections, please?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to express my concerns, our concerns regarding this application. Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Ali. You're doing a wonderful job there. And actually, I'd just like to welcome the fact that Mr. McDonald has attempted to communicate with residents and to allay some of our concerns. But essentially, the application is to turn Schiehallion House into a commercial property and therefore to maximise income. And essentially, everything else kind of arises from that. So the application is wholly inappropriate for this area, which is an area of special conservation. I've heard, I sort of read between the lines, some of the comments here about, well, these things can happen anyway, launching of a boat, because there's no actual bylaws or whatever. But I think the point is that the scale of this application means it's likely to exacerbate some of the problems that already exist. And I'm sure as councillors, you're perhaps aware of some of those, not just on Loch Tummel, but elsewhere. I mean, an extreme example, we've had an attempted murder on the site simply because the resident objected to a noise. and that case is currently going before the courts. Now, that's an extreme example, but I think it goes to underline some of the concerns that we as residents have about the disturbance that we experience already, but that this application has the potential to significantly exacerbate. Guests coming to Schiehallion House will have no particular allegiance to the area, no particular responsibility to local residents. And given the scale and therefore the potential nature of the parties, and I use that word deliberately, the parties that will be using the premises, is likely to be disruptive in the various ways that you've heard already: light pollution, noise pollution, use of the lock, disturbance to wildlife, etc. I would therefore, to cut things short, I mean, you've all read my objection. I therefore ask the committee to object to this application or reject this application. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Stanfield. Do members have any questions for Mr. Stanfield? Councillor Harvey.
Hi, Mr. Stanfield. Similar question as to your local resident colleague as well. If there was a ban on parties after a certain time, launching of boats, fireworks, etc., would you still have an objection to this?
We've discussed it at some length with Mr. McDonald, and as I said before, Mr. McDonald has come across as receptive to our concerns, understanding of those, but I come back to my basic point that this is a commercial operation and all that potentially goes with that. If conditions along the lines you suggest were in place, and as Mr. Gifford stated earlier, could be enforced, and that's a key issue, of course, then my objections will be less. I mean, clearly I would like to see what the nature of those conditions were, but I guess the short answer will be yes, I'd be more receptive.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Stanfield? If there are no further questions for Mr. Stanfield, could I invite Ishbel McLaren to speak, please? Sorry. Councillor Long.
Don't forget him. Yeah. I understand people's concerns. I get that. I understand it. And I can see there's a good few people are objecting to this. I mean, the first thing is, one of the words that you used there was enforcement. And I don't really think that that's a word that we can implement here today. So that's not going to happen. I'm just trying to understand where the line is for acceptance of such a proposal and non-acceptance for such a proposal, because you all seem to be anti because this might happen or that might happen. We don't know that any of it would happen. Is there a line where you would actually accept the proposal?
I think by definition, we don't know what will happen. I can't sort of look forward. I have to mention one particular incident, which perhaps underlines or gives an indication of the potential that could happen. That something like a month or 2 months ago, significant party at Schiehallion House, large bonfire in front of the house for quite a considerable time during the night, speedboat, huge flag, lots of noise, bagpipes, etc. across the loch. And as I shared with Mr. Manolo on the day we met him, was it Sunday, it didn't do anything to allay our concerns as to the potential for what we might experience. I think perhaps that's the best answer to your question. If you ask me to draw a line or to give you a line, I can't at the moment. I mean, if you were to come to me with proposals, say, right, well, no, I don't know, no parties bigger than 40 or what, no fireworks after 9 o'clock, then I could look line by line and say, yeah, that's good, that's good. How about tweaking that a little bit? So I can't give you a line, but you know where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Okay, Councillor Mayor.
I'm very sorry, convener. I wasn't going to ask this question because the topic of it hadn't been raised as yet, but since Mr Stanfield has brought it up, regarding the bonfire, which I must admit was the thing which has most concerned me in the letters of objection. At least 2 other letters have mentioned this bonfire, and I wonder, did you report that to Scottish Fire and Rescue or to the police at the time that you saw this unsupervised bonfire burning into the early hours of the morning? Thank you.
As far as I know, I don't think any residents did report it. I'm not sure if one of them did. So the answer to that is no. I mean, Mr McDonald has assured us it was a one-off, but because you raised the question of the potential, that illustrates to us the potential for that kind of disturbance to occur.
Okay, are there any further questions for Mr Stansfield? No further questions for Mr Stansfield. Could I now move on to Ishbel McLaren? Thank you.
Yes, I've lodged objections on behalf of my husband and myself, and I would ask you to consider those. My main concern, I'm not going to add much to what my fellow residents have said, but my concern is the impact on the local area. There's a visual impact, which can't do much about now. The impact of light coming from the property directly across the loch, the impact of noise, which carries very substantially across the loch, and the impact possibly on safety concerns of other loch users, because this has to date been a very quiet loch populated by sailors and anglers, and anything that disrupts that, I think, could lead to safety concerns. I know reassurances have been given, but there can't be any guarantees, as we've discussed, and I think a lack of control over the running of an enterprise like this is the main issue for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ishbel McLaren? No questions. Okay. Before we move on, Councillor Braun, you've got a question for officers.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I just want to clarify, Mr Stanford brought the point up. Obviously, it's a residential area. This is with effect to become a commercial enterprise. Has there been any intimation that planning is required on this? There's no mention in the paperwork we have here, and I'm just wondering, obviously, many of the points raised in many of the letters relate around to planning. So is there a necessity for that in this one?
Councillor Braun, from a licensing perspective, it's not a consideration that we would make. We have no overview on the planning side. Maybe the applicant himself might be able to give you a better indication if planning permission has been sought.
Thank you. Could I now invite Mr McDonald to provide details of his application and to respond to the objections?
Okay, thank you very much. So when I received the letters of objection, I looked at all of the concerns, and one by one, with my wife, we went through them and with the person who is my tenant on the property, who will become the estate manager, which is an important point to make. And I must say, largely, we were slightly surprised at the speculation of what might happen, because we'd be very, very much in agreement with what the concerns are if they did happen. And in fact, the person who's my tenant there now, Mrs. Watson-Brown, would be in place all of the time to make sure that all of the restrictions which that have been requested, most of which I think are very reasonable, and I would want exactly the same as the objectors want, that we would mitigate them and would intervene in the event that that people didn't follow the guidelines that we give. I'll just go through a few of them and make some commentary. First of all, on the artificial light, I first became aware of that when I'd been to see one of the people, one of the objectors, or turned out to be one of the objectors, Mr. McIntyre, on the south side of the loch. and he'd mentioned the issue of the artificial light. I went back that evening, put the lights on, and saw exactly what he meant. And immediately, without I having been asked to, we went to the two people who'd done curtains and blinds for us, asked if they could put blinds in, because to me that's unacceptable. I completely see what they're saying. I don't want that either. As it turned out, we then got all these letters of objection, and so I expedited the process. We really hurried it through to get blackout blinds put in, and they're in now. Trouble is, they were measured a meter short, so they'll have to be redone in August. But anyway, they're in. The noise pollution, I get. I don't. I mean, there is not noise pollution, by the way, both sides. It comes onto our side of the loch when the Loch Tummel Sailing Club are sailing. They have their air horn going, which I assume you can hear on the south side of the loch as well. I was walking up in Bohally Woods on, I think it was the 21st of June, and I could hear a big party that was happening at the Loch Tummel Sailing Club. It was in, I think it probably finished by 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. I have no objection to that at all. Never even occurred to me that that would be an issue. But I am aware of the fact that noise travels. And I wouldn't, I mean, we have played, you know, I've lived there for 21 years. We've never had any objection about noise. We have played music there. I mean, we don't have ghetto blasters. As for the bagpipes, it was me who was the piper. It may not have been very good, but it lasted 5 minutes. And you know, and I mean, if you can't play the bagpipes here, where can you play them? And I don't want to be facetious about it, because I completely get the point about noise pollution. You know, my suggestion would be that with all of these things, we put it in any pre-marketing material that we have, that the guidelines are that there should not be any noise played outside after, say, 2200, which is well inside the antisocial noise guidelines, and that it shouldn't be played loud at all on the outside. And if music is played inside, then doors should be closed at 10 p.m. As for motorboats on the loch, there was that incident. There was the incident on the 7th of June, which has been referred to by the objectors. That boat was not launched from my property. It brought a passenger to my property, and that was the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings, and you know, the passenger asked for it to be speeded up a bit. I have a video of it. It lasted 70 seconds. 70 seconds in 21 years that's the only objection I've ever had. And I don't want this place turning into a, you know, a crazy motor boat centre. It is a matter of fact. The day that I went up to post all the letters to the objectors to try to address their concerns, it was a generic letter that I sent to everybody, as you know, followed by a meeting with those who could attend and a one-on-one meeting with another couple. That day, there was a motorboat speeding down the centre of the loch with some kind of rubber thing on the back with kids on it, and I think Mr. Stansfield saw that as well that day. And it is a matter of fact that people do drive boats fast down at our end. We don't have control over them because there is no bylaw. It's an agreement which I have always abided by, the Loch Tummel riparian site. I've never actually seen it, but I've always told you can't create a bow wave. And we never have, nor has any guest from my property done that, at least as far as I know. No one's ever brought it up as an issue. But nevertheless, I do agree that I don't want that either. And either I'm there every single week. I'm not there all week, but you know, I'm there and would, you know, if there was any issue, Katrina or Mrs. Watson Brown is there all of the time, and all it takes is us to be alerted to it, and we would intervene and tell people that that's not the guidelines with which we agree to the letting of the property, and they'd have to bring their own motorcraft. I personally don't think many people would, but maybe I'm wrong. And if they did, they would be asked to abide by the guidelines of the loch and to respect it. what were the other points? As for it being a commercial property, I mean, this is my home. I've always wanted to move there permanently for personal reasons and for professional reasons. At the moment, I can't, and we remain in Edinburgh for now. In the longer term, I'd like to move there full time, but between now and then, it would help me a lot, particularly with the employment of the not just the estate manager, but also the person who does the gardens. He's there 3 days a week. There's a number of people who are very, very interested in providing catering facilities to the extent, you know, we do have friends around, we do have parties. Again, there've never been an issue with that. This is just us as residential people. There's never been an issue before. Lots of people are employed doing this, and I would imagine that, you know, more will be. I don't think, or at least I don't think it's the sort of place where people would have. I mean, we'll make it explicit that there can't be stag parties and hen parties and that sort of thing. It's not that sort of place. It's the tranquility of the loch, which I love as much as any of the objectors do, and I'm completely in tune with them and aligned with them, as is my wife, as is Mrs. Watson Brown, who lives there permanently. You know, and on other issues which have been brought up, we've looked at all of them and done all that we can think of, and we'll continue to do all we can think of to try to mitigate any concerns that our neighbours on the south side have. I don't know the neighbours on the south side very well, which is why I wanted to join the Loch Tunnel Sailing Club. Actually, I know a lot of people on the north side, a lot of people who are, you know, I think would have the same concerns as those who have objected if they were asked, me included. That's just not the way it's meant to be. And I mean, this is a place that we would look to let out on short-term lets when we're not using it. I mean, this week my whole family's coming along. My brother's bringing his boat down from Ullapool, as he has done many times before. I've got my own boats actually being repaired at the minute, head gasket problem. But you know, we've never had an issue with the use of boats, and I don't think that there's any reason why there should be you know, a restriction enforced on me or any other member of the loch. Quite where these other boats launch from, I'm aware that a lot come from Ardguarlich, down on the east end of the loch. The others, I don't know where they launch from, but there are certainly occasions when boats, in fact, there are occasions where I know boats launch from other properties which flout the rules. We don't, but other properties, I think all of the objectors would concede that that does happen, and there's nothing any of us can do about it because there's no law against it. It's simply a guideline. And, you know, as regards command and control, all I can say is Katrina Watson Brown is permanently there. I'm pretty much, and if I was required to be on site to intervene, I would come. If I was in Edinburgh, I'd come up from Edinburgh, and if I was on site, obviously I'd do it myself. But you're right, I can't have complete and utter guarantees that guests who I don't know and who haven't met and who are renting on a commercial basis, I can't guarantee that the whole thing would be watertight. The only other thing I'd say about the bonfire is that we were instructed to, after there had been complaints about the fact we hadn't grassed the area in front of the house. That's because we had a visit from Perth and Kinross Council and from SEPA at the same time. I was actually in Brussels at the time and got a phone call, but it was explained that the area was actually grass. It's just that because it had been a very cold winter and then very wet, the grass hadn't come through yet, but it's all come through now. And while they were there, they looked at all there's a lot of fallen wood there, and they instructed us to get rid of that by the end of July. We were waiting for a windless night so that there wouldn't be any wind going either side, either onto our property or heading off down the south. And if you there was virtually no wind that night. And it was the first time in 6 weeks that that had been the case. We had enough people on hand, including somebody, a contractor who had a mechanical digger on site, had we needed to intervene. And so we lit it, and that was a one-off. We then sent a report to Perth and Kinross Council and to SEPA, both of whom acknowledged receipt, acknowledged it had now been dealt with, and that was why that happened. What else do I need to address? Fireworks. We've never had fireworks. I'm aware that other properties have let off fireworks. I'm quite happy to ban fireworks, to say in the guidelines that I don't want, but that's never even really occurred to me. But on all of these things, to the extent I can mitigate it in the guidelines for which people would be able to rent the property, I would do all I can to say that people are expected to abide by the guidelines of the Loch Tomorrow Riparian Society, to not use fireworks. I think it's very damaging to wildlife. And by the way, we have plenty of wildlife on our property. We've got 2 ponds that we've reinstated for wild ducks. We have pine martens, we've got red squirrels. We have an extensive planting program for trees. A lot of the ones that were there 21 years ago when my brother and I first bought it were rotten and fallen. We've done a huge amount of work on the drainage. We are now planting. I've planted over 150 trees, many of which are Scots pines, which were never there before. There's oaks and there's all sorts, and I have a planting program in mind, all including trees which are designed to attract wildlife. Same, we keep bees, we keep chickens, we've got dogs. We're very, very aware of our environmental responsibilities. And as I said, I'm largely very much in agreement with. I want the same outcome as the people raising objections want. The difference is I don't think that things will be the way they think they will be, and I'll do everything I can to mitigate, as well as to continue to and to intervene if I'm required to. That's all I can say, really. Is that enough or too much? Sorry.
Thank you very much. Could I just open it up to questions for Mr. MacDonald? I have the first question, if you don't mind. It's about planning permission, which seems to have been raised a couple of times about converting from a residential accommodation to a short-term let. Have you applied for planning permission or sought advice from planning officers?
Sorry. Well, I've applied in the original planning application, which was submitted in 2000, and there was the original one in 2012, where I had made it clear that we would want to do the short-term lets were a part of what we applied for, and there was an economic report done by Savills which outlined the economic benefit we felt that would bring to the area in terms of employment, and I stick by that. There was then a further planning application for some alterations that we wanted to have made as the property was being built. So the planning applications all been approved, but do you mean a planning application just for short-term lets? Well, this is, I mean, we'd followed all the guidelines that we believed to be necessary in order to apply for a short-term let, and that's why my application went in. Clearly, that's drawn fire and objections. I haven't made any application other than that, but I don't really see this as being a commercial property. This is a property where, when we're not using it, we could let it out to other people. And I'm not sure whether there is a requirement. I'd need to take advice from the council. Do I require a further license other than this license?
Could I maybe suggest therefore you do take advice from our officers within the plan as to, you know, what they deem to, whether you require planning permission or not for the conversion from a residential accommodation to a short-term let accommodation. Okay. We can't make that decision here. That's completely something else, but.
Sorry, to answer your question, I haven't yet applied for anything, but if I get through this round, then I will seek advice from, get my architect to seek advice from Perth and Kinross Council on what else I'm required to do.
Councillor McPherson. Councillor King.
Just clarity for my own thoughts, really. The bonfire. It was you that did the bonfire, not visiting parties.
Yes, it was me. Guilty.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, convener. Just to ask Mr. MacDonald if he could clarify the role of Mrs. Watson-Brown. You say that she's there permanently. Is that actually on site, or does she live at an adjacent property? And is she employed as a member of staff specifically to manage the short-term lets? Thank you.
She does live there permanently. She's my tenant. She's not employed at the moment because there's nothing to employ her for, but that's what she would be employed for. That she's accepted, that would be her role. If there were people in that were to be guests short-term let, then she'd be on call and available between certain hours, and if necessary at any time. But yeah, she's not. She is there. She's my tenant. She's there permanently. It was her and her husband, but he's no longer there. But yeah, she's not intending to go anywhere.
So thanks. So if you were to be granted a license and you had a short-term let, would she be on site? Thank you.
Yes, she would, and that would be her role. So which she totally accepts and wants, and is in agreement with. Would have the same concerns as all the objectors have, as would I.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, Mr. MacDonald? Councillor Braun, sorry.
Thank you for your representation. Just two very quick questions. Following on from Councillor McPherson's point, Mrs. Watson-Brown, if she takes on as the caretaker, would her contact details be spread to your various neighbours so they have a contact number to deal with any problems?
Yes, absolutely. I hadn't thought of that, but of course, I mean, I maybe they've got a number anyway. I mean, her husband used to, I think, work for most of you, didn't? And I would think they've probably got and they certainly can have my number if you haven't got it already.
And my second question was going back to the use of the lock, and you touched on it very briefly when you answered another question, was that within your guidelines, you mentioned about the rules of the lock, but do you actually drill down to specifically what people can't do? If they can't use jet skis or they can't use powered boats, is that something you have in the guidelines?
Well, I've never actually seen them myself, but I was told, my brother and I were told when we first moved there in 2003, you can't create a bow wave, and at least up until a certain line east of the inner Loch Tummel. So I've always had that as word of mouth, but at our end, never have we create. And my understanding is you can't create a bow wave. As I've never actually seen the document myself. I know there's not a law; it's a guideline, but we've always abided by it and always will want to.
Okay, Councillor.
Thank you, convener. Excuse me, and hello, Mr. MacDonald. I would just like to ask, funnily enough, in your submission, you answered some of the questions I had noted down that I wanted to ask you. One of them, which was about whether you would be prepared to install blackout blinds. So I'm really glad to hear that you went ahead and took that proactive action. these guidelines that you're talking about, are these going to be written into the short-term tenancy agreements for the people who are letting the house for weekends, family parties or whatever? And if they default on following the guidelines, will there be some kind of financial penalty on them, like a deposit that would be lost or something similar? Thank you.
So I think that first of all, it would be in the marketing material. We've all agreed on our side of it that we'd want that in the in a sense. I'm quite glad that we were alerted to it, because we would want that to be in the marketing material, make it quite clear this is not for hen parties, stag nights. We expect respect for the loch. We expect, so it's a place of tranquility and and all the other good things that come with it. Secondly, in the joining in the instructions that we have for people, there's a whole lot of fire things that in health and safety have to be given, and again that would be reinforced in that. But they would have been informed. It'll be clear on the marketing material. I mean, we haven't actually done any yet because we don't have a license to do anything. So that, but yeah, that is my intention, that would be in there. First of all in the marketing material, and then again in the in-house instructions. Was that it? That was it. Yeah. Thanks.
Are there any further questions?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Assume that there is a launching facility on the site. You mentioned yourself and your brother both have boats. Is it possible in any way that access to that could be restricted so that it's not a facility that is available to guests that are coming? Obviously, that for yourself and your brother with your boats, it would be accessible when you're in the property. Is it possible that restrictions could be put in place to prevent guests, so it's not part of if they're coming there, it's not coming there to bring their boats and launch them?
I suppose it's possible, but I think it's not desirable. One of the reasons that the Loch Tunnel Sailing Club's site for needing boats on site is safety. And if people are there with their kids are on paddle boards or something like that, they may want a motorized craft in the water. And again, I mean, provided people are adhering by the guidelines of the Loch Tunnel Riparian Society, I don't see why they should be restricted to use of the loch. And I mean, nobody else is. There's application, I think there's permission granted for 3 boathouses on the loch. There are numerous jetties up and down the loch. I don't know how many, but there are certainly some. And presumably, like me, people don't just use them themselves, but they let their guests use them too. I mean, not necessarily commercial guests, but their guests. But I think there's a legitimate reason. Firstly, there is the safety thing, and I just be personally very reluctant to ban people from using motorized craft, provided they act within the guidelines. If they did not, we would. Oh, you asked me a question about deposits. Whether I mean, again, I haven't really thought of that because it's never happened, and I personally don't think it will happen. I think people will adhere to the guidelines that we ask them to adhere to. If they don't, I'll have to rethink that. But I mean, the answer to your question is yes, it's possible. If you impose it, then we would have to go by that. But I would personally resist. I'd be sorry if that happened, because I don't think it's necessary or fair. Was that? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. My second question was going to be around the person who you'll have on site permanently.
would you then make a contact number available to concerned residents that if there was something happening, that they would have a contact number that they could phone to express their concern about things when you're not on site?
Yes, definitely. The number of Mrs. Watson Brown and my number too.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? There are no further questions for Mr. McDonald's. Could I therefore invite Mr. Elgore to sum up, please?
Thank you. Yes, Mr. McDonald's reassurances have been wide-ranging and tried to address most of the things. And when we met with him last week, we also suggested a list of rules for potential lettees to say that if you broke some of the rules, your deposit is at risk. And he's been very reluctant to go down that road. So that didn't reassure us that the policing is going to be the main issue. And if people are going to have carte blanche, really, and it's a large property, it's going to attract large groups of people. So there's going to be disturbance. If it's a family home, people are going to be there and looking after it well. So these are our main concerns, and his reluctance to put in some of those issues that could give him the power to police things, he's been reluctant to do that. So from our perspective, we would like to not allow this change of use and licensing. And on the issue of whether the planning and the licensing issues are linked or not, David Taylor, who's one of the objectors, is an architect, and he knows a lot about these issues, and he discussed with us about how those two are linked. So in his documents, if you read those carefully, he describes the links between the two, and his position is that the change of use needs to be sorted out first before the licensing is granted, because that contravenes one side of the council, whereas this issue here is being dealt with totally separately as licensing. So I think that's worth looking into in more detail, but I'm not an architect, so I don't know about it. And it's a pity David Taylor couldn't be here today. But from our perspective, we wouldn't really want to remove our objection, because once the floodgates are open, it's very hard to deal with these issues afterwards. We're trying to preserve the nature of the environment, both for the wildlife and for the residents at the moment. Thank you very much.
Could I just ask Shonamiki to just advise us on the position around about planning and licensing, please?
Convener, from a licence perspective, we wouldn't need planning permission to be in place before we would grant a licence. They set completely separately. I have no enforcement powers with regards to any planning issues that may arise.
Thank you. Therefore, could I invite Mr. Gifford to come back in and sum up, please?
Hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. Sorry. Yes. Well, I've heard everything that Mr. McDonald has said, and as I've previously said, you know, if it can be guaranteed, and this is the nub of it really, if it were guaranteed that there would be complete compliance with all the need to be, you know, as non-disruptive as possible to the community, and you know, be good neighbours, it'd be marvellous. But as we've all agreed, there isn't really any way other than by experiencing the disturbance and then reporting it back after the event, and that isn't a method of control. So a lot of this is beyond Mr. McDonald's control. He can be as agreeable to it, and I hear what he's saying and I appreciate what he's saying, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that his clients are going to be as agreeable. You know, and people who are out to have a good time inevitably will have a good time. The matter of the use of watercraft on the loch, more work needs to be done on it. The riparian owners need to formalise more correctly what is expected of users of the loch, and that is something that Mr. MacDonald could contribute to by joining the discussion. But I think that he, like other loch users, and riparian owners, is in a bit of a rough spot with that. There's too much flexibility. There's too many people, newcomers to the loch or to the Tummel Valley, who perhaps aren't as aware of what should be done, and need to be encouraged to be part of the agreement. And that is beyond. It's not Mr. MacDonald's immediate responsibility to do that, but he can be part of it if it were possible to get an agreement in place. The ideal scenario would be to get something like they have on other bodies of water in Scotland, i.e. the Loch Lomond's National Park, where the use of speedboats is highly restricted and zonalised, so that there is a minimum of disturbance, but it doesn't bar people from using motorcraft. But it does require them to use them in a sensible manner. We're talking about things which take years to put in place. What we're all bothered about is the immediate impact should a short-term licence be granted, and then our concerns justified by inappropriate behaviour. I don't think I can see any more than Haver on, really. I've said what my main points are. I don't know. I don't know what Mr. MacDonald can do to fully convince us that everything will be as he intends. But I think that's where it lies. The onus is on Mr. MacDonald to provide as much reassurance as possible, backed up by substance, to convince us that it won't be an ongoing issue with Schiehallion House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gifford, sorry. Could I now invite Mr. Stanfield to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you. Swing it around. Can you hear me okay? That's good. I was once a lecturer, you think I'd know how to do this. But yeah, we've heard comments about, well, there are other users, there have been fireworks, there have been other parties, there have been other people launching boats, etc., etc. That may well be the case, but simply because one person's driving at 100 miles down the motorway doesn't mean everybody else can. And I refer back to one of the points I made in my initial comments, and that's for the potential to increase this range of disturbances, be that light, noise, watercraft, wildlife, whatever. It's that potential that this introduces. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please invite Mrs. McLaren to sum up?
Yes, I've heard what Mr. MacDonald has said, and I think he shares our feelings towards the loch. My difficulty is that policing a property like this is almost, I would say, almost impossible, and the control just isn't there to deal with it as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I please invite Mr. MacDonald to sum up, please?
Yeah. So first one, subject to the deposit, I just kind of have this image of a legal rabbit hole that I don't know where that would leave me. I haven't looked into it and spoken to any lawyers about it. Just instinctively, I shy away from it because, again, in this, much as the objectors think this is all going to happen, I kind of think it's not going to happen. And I think that judicial intervention by Mrs. Watson-Brown and by me should be, and hopefully building up a good understanding through the marketing material that we should be able to avoid this happening. I take the point on riparian owners. Again, I've never really known it to be an issue. No one's ever asked me to further the claim. I've always just taken it for granted that we don't create a bow wave at that end of the loch. And as I said, never knowingly have, and as far as I know, no one from who's ever launched from my property ever has either. And when Mr. Gifford says that it won't be an ongoing issue, it's not an ongoing issue. There is no issue at the moment. And ongoing implies that there is already a problem. You know, yeah, there was a bonfire the night, the 7th of June, and as I said, for 70 seconds, some guy from the other end of the loch brought a passenger down and drove his boat a bit fast. But this isn't an ongoing issue. Nothing yet. There are no plans to go in pursuit of the things that would cause the upsets which have been mentioned. I think there are considerable benefits to local employment. As I said, I mean, everything in that house is my home. You know, we're using it all the time. Most of my family are there this week, and you know, this isn't a hotel. I mean, it's something that we want to, you know, preserve, and we respect, and we want to keep it the way that it is. And I can't, but you're right. I mean, I can't have complete and utter iron grip control over everything that happens, and maybe there will be mistakes, but I'll do everything I can to rectify them if they do occur. That's all I can say, really.
Thank you. Do members wish to adjourn for discussion? Yes. Okay. Okay, so everybody, thank you for your patience while we discussed it. My motion is to grant the application subject to the following conditions. After 10 o'clock each day of stay, that's 10 o'clock in the evening, the garden grounds is not to be used for socialising, and there should be no amplified music played in the garden grounds after 10 p.m. Guests must be made aware through guidance policies and/or the welcome pack that they are required to comply with the rules of the Loch Tomel Riparian Owners Society. The day-to-day management of the property should be available to local residents to address any issues that arise regarding the letting of the property. The contact details of the day-to-day manager should be provided to the local residents of Loch Tomel. And finally, I just want to make you aware that there is a policy on the release of fireworks that you may want to check online from Perth and Kinross Council. Okay, so that's not a condition, it's just for you to make yourself familiar, familiarise yourself. Do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, convener.
Are there any amendments? If there are no amendments, the licence has been granted, subject to the conditions I outlined before. Okay, thank you.